Congressman, you have called the impending impeachment trial, quote, the Democrats' second official attempt to overthrow President Trump, end quote. Now, I have to tell you, after reading of the cabal in Time magazine this weekend, some of us are believing that this isn't the second, maybe it's a third unofficial attempt, but I digress. What can we expect to see this week?
Well, hey, you're right. This is a continuation of everything that they've done for 4.5 years now. But what you're going to see this week is basically a show trial. This is like a Soviet show trial. I mean, first of all, President Trump's going to win on the facts because you're going to find the timeline. You're going to see that these folks that actually committed the riot, they were planning well in advance of this thing. So you can't incite a riot that somebody else has already planned. The second thing is you're going to take his language. You're going to see a lot of there's going to be video footage throwing incite to violence language that the Democrats use regularly, and they don't get brought before the Congress for impeachment, even though they're elected members of Congress, House or Senate. So he's going to win on the facts. He's going to win on the procedure because there was no committee hearings. There was no due process in the House. And then the third thing is he's going to win on the constitutionality, James, because when you look at this thing, impeachment is to remove a president, vice president, or other executive officer. That's what the Constitution says. Guess what President Trump is of those three? None. He's none of those. So it's absurd.
It is absurd, and yet they're doing it, Congressman. It's absurd on every level, and yet they're doing it, and they're doing it with a passion, that's driven by Trump derangement syndrome. Seriously, why are they wasting their time? What is the objective? What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, two things. Number one, never let their zeal, they have zeal without knowledge. So what they're doing is they're exercising their emotion, their passion, and they want to keep the passions inflamed of the left-wing base of the Democrat Party. So that's number one. And number two, they are hoping and praying that if they were to get a conviction in the Senate, which they're not going to get, but if they were to get it, then they could say he could never hold public office again because their worst nightmare is that he either runs in 2024 or he gets behind somebody and gins up enough support to knock somebody off if we have fair and free elections ever again in 2024.
We have Congressman Andy Biggs in the center ring of the conservative circus. This weekend, there was a riot of sorts in D.C., and none of the mainstream media outlets covered it. How do you explain that?
They were busy elsewhere. So who knows what they were doing. They will never admit that there was rioting anywhere else. In fact, it was mostly a peaceful protest, James. You know that.
Right.
That's what all left-wing riots are, mostly peaceful protests.
One more question for you. What's the takeaway from the actions against Marjorie Taylor Greene? She spoke to the nation on Friday after the vote was taken, but what is your big takeaway on that?
Well, that the left that controls all branches of government now are going to try to cancel anybody that is, like in this instance, a strong conservative woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're going to try to cancel it. She's just the first, by the way. There's going to be a series of dominoes. I was told the day after they removed her last week that the Democrats are going to introduce, for instance, a measure to censure 140 members of the Republican House of Representatives because they voted one way or another for election integrity and not to certify. They objected. In other words, we did what the Democrats did. They're going to censure, and this is just going to keep going. So the big takeaway is that when Joe Biden, President Biden, or anybody else from the left says they want unity, I mean, Bruce Springsteen, what audacity to say he wants unity. What they don't want unity, they want conformity and compliance and subservience from people who dissent from the leftist orthodoxy now. That's the big takeaway.